Okay, so here we are. We're approaching Nanki Shirahama. This is gonna be a landing debrief on how to land this beautiful, magnificent, wonderful plane. I say that uh very haphazardly. Okay, but here we are. We're approaching Nanki Shirahama. As you can see, my speed is pretty good. We're at 143, and our altitude we're pretty low. I could say we could go a little bit higher. Um, Really what you want is you want to do light corrections. You don't want to like just pull back like your life depends on it. Like you don't need that much. You just literally just need like what I'm doing on the yoke there. You can see it. Literally just like very gentle, like very small corrections. So right now we're at 100 plus feet. Um, what I mean by 100 plus feet is 100 feet to like 1,000 to 100 feet. So 100 plus being 100 to 1,000. Um, However far back you can see the runway, here you can't. Here you can barely see the runway, but from here, obviously without me being distracted. Thank God I look straight back. From here, there's basically a science to landing these things, right? I say things, right? Uh, there is a science to them. So basically, if you've ever played, say, a rhythm game, or you've ever played, say, for example, or not even played, like driven a car and you need to like or like you play a racing game. That's the best example. If you play a racing game, right, and you need to enter a corner, you need to have a braking reference, right? Right. Because if you just go into the corner without a braking reference, what do you think's gonna happen? You're gonna go off the track, right? So this is basically what we're doing here. Um, In a plane, it's a bit different because you're not going into a corner. You're landing on a runway that's straight ahead of you, and you're going up and down, not left and right, right? So, at about 100 plus feet, as you can see, we're 1,200 feet above sea level, actually, like literally exactly 1,200 feet above sea level. Um, that's gonna change since the airport looks like it's on a plateau. I'm guessing. Um, that's gonna like fluctuate really quickly. It's gonna go up immediately. So I was gonna say we're gonna say that goes like from like 800 to like 300 like flat. So from out here, I can tell you exactly what I'm looking at right now. I'm looking at there, the tip of the mouse, right there, right there, literally right there. If you look at the tip of the mouse, it's like right there on the runway, in the center of the runway. Now, why do I look there? So that I can like fly the plane accordingly, to what I see. I can't see the poppies, so naturally I have to go visual. I have to make sure that my plane is flying to that point, in front of me, which in fact it is, right? We're sinking a bit. As you can see, we dropped way below the VREF. We almost stalled, which is great. Not really. Um, but yeah, so we're approaching the runway. We're actually not aligned that well, I must admit. Um, but yeah, I'm still looking at that point. I'm still looking at that point right there, right there, right there. I'm just readjusting my eyes, continuous. You can actually see the 1,000 footers right here. And you're just gonna keep looking there. You're gonna keep looking there. You're gonna keep looking. You're gonna keep looking. You're gonna keep looking. Keep looking. Keep looking. Here's the fluctuation in altitude. We look down at the PFD. Goes to 200 very quickly, and now we're at 100 feet. Right about here. Here's 100 feet. We're still looking there, that exact same spot. We're still looking right here until the plane gives us the call out 50, right? At about 50 feet, which we would have just called it, and you can actually see from the video once I pause it, the plane was actually starting to pitch up because of me, right? At 50 feet, when the plane calls out 50 feet, you're no longer looking here. You're looking at the end of the runway. At the complete end of the runway. You're still flying the plane down to here. I'm not telling you to fly the plane to the end of the runway. I mean, you're never going to make the runway at that point, right? So what I'm telling you is keep flying the plane down to this point, but look at the end of the runway. So now we're going to be approaching 30 feet. Now I want you to shift your attention instead of practicing exactly what I told you, right, with the mouse, right? Oh, like not here, but here. As we approach 30 feet, I want you to shift your focus to the engine panel. So at about 30, you're gonna see this notch right here. So that notch right there is my throttle, and you're actually gonna see the engine roll back. You're gonna see the engine starting to, come back to idle. There's 50, there's 30, and then there's the flare touchdown, right? It's very easy to do once you've done a bunch of practice. You could do a bunch of practice flights. So 50, looking at the end of the runway, and then 30 is when I close the thrust levers. 10 is when I flare. So this was actually a really, really good landing. Very good landing. Like, this was literally like a perfect example. So, whoops, oops, oops, oops. Okay, so there's 100, there's 50. Now I'm looking at the end of the runway. End of the runway. 30, I'm closing the throttle. The plane's bleeding off all that airspeed. And touchdown, right? Now, when do you flare? This is what you're gonna ask me. Uh, as you can see at 30, I don't flare at all. I just idle the throttle and I keep flying it down. You usually want to flare it when it says 10. Um, but usually when you approach the runway, you're already in a sort of flare. I like to call it the pre-flare. Um, so you're already kind of in like a pre-flare. So at 10, you're just increasing the flare, and you're just letting all that airspeed bleed off so that you could touch the ground, and you're also making the landing a lot more smoother, right? So here you can see that. So at about 50, I actually adjust the pitch, the attitude. I started adjusting it. You can see it goes from like straight down towards the ground to a little up as I look to the end of the runway. At 30, I close the thrust levers, as you can see right there by that bar with the notch, right? That bar means that the throttle has actually moved back uh, because of my input, obviously. And then at about 10, I just start pulling back. You can see that nose rise, and I keep pulling it back. I don't hold it. I keep oscillating it, like almost like if I got here. Let's see if I can use my camera. If I can't use my camera, that will be very, very tragic. You know, that would be very, very, very tragic. Very, very, very tragic. Very, 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 very tragic. Guys, I don't think it's working. Oh no, it's very tragic. Okay. Anyways, but basically, you can see it in the video. I mean, I don't even have to show you. You can see right about at 10, you can actually see even still, you can still see the yoke oscillating. So you see, I'm just continuing, like, just rapidly pulling it back and letting it go to neutral. Rapidly pulling it back, neutral. Rapidly pulling back, neutral, right? Until it finally touches the ground. So we'll watch that again. So I'll actually give you the full speed, like, rundown. So 100, I'm still looking at that aiming point. Actually, I'll get the audio real quick. Still looking at that aiming point. 50, I'm looking at the end. 30, I'm closing the throttle. 10, I'm flaring, 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 flaring. Touchdown. So again, 100 feet, I'm still looking there. 50, I bring the plane back a little bit, get into a pre-flare, and then I look at the end of the runway. 50, I get it into a pre-flare. So there's the pre-flare right there. And 30, I close the throttles, and now at 10, I'm just oscillating the yoke back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, trying to get a smooth touchdown. I don't know what to tell you aside from you can't. I don't think you can get this on the first try. You can absolutely try, and I wish you good luck. But this is based off of practice. You can practice. You don't have to get into like you don't have to go into the sim and do like traffic work like a Cessna in a 737. You don't have to do that. The way you practice, the way I've practiced is that I've done normal flights and then I just continue improving, right? That's all I do. That's basically practice. Um, the more you practice, 100 feet and before, you're still looking at the aiming points, and then 50, you look at the end. of the runway, and then 30 you close the throttles. Sorry, hold on. 50 you look at the end of the runway and you bring the plane back into a pre-flare, so that's still descending, but it's not descending as fast. 30 you close the throttles, and 10 you finally give the plane that one final pitch adjustment, that attitude adjustment, so that you get a landing, right? A good landing, I hope, right? A few questions, and a few questions and a few things that I've seen. Is while the plane just kept going down to the ground no matter how much I've pulled back on the throttle, the way to solve that is make sure, first of all, your throttles aren't in idle. Second, make sure you're on VREF, because if you're not on VREF, if you're dropping below VREF and you're still not over the threshold, you're gonna drop like a rock, and that's not gonna be comfortable. You're gonna give the passengers whiplash. And when I mean give the plane a little bit of throttle, remember, keep the throttle up. Keep the throttle up until 30 feet above the ground. Aside from that, that's pretty much all I have. And yeah, go practice.